Hello, Internet world, and welcome into Classic Wax, brought to you by the Beat Sessions. I'm Mitchell Weary, your host. Hope you're all having a fantastic Tuesday. Hope the weekend was good to you as well. It's an interesting time of year right now. There's very little music that is released in December in general. A couple projects here and there that are popping up. Keep you posted on that stuff as it's released, and certainly trying to catch up and look at some stuff that I didn't look at in the first half of the year. As many of you know who follow the channel, I took the first half of the year off, had some projects going on, didn't really have the time to commit to the project the way that I wanted to, with integrity and with the energy and the time to actually put together quality content for you. Some days I still feel like I suffer doing that. So many thanks to all of you for always tuning in, always be supportive. I really appreciate that. It never goes unnoticed, especially on my end. And kudos seriously to all of you. There's a lot of people that talk about the number of comments on the channel and everything, and just how much of a response there is. So it's really cool of all of you that you're a part of this, and hopefully moving into 2025, it just gets bigger as far as the community, the interaction, all that good stuff. Got some house cleaning to take care of before we get started here. Really excited to talk about Queen, though, today and A Day at the Races. Fantastic record, a record that I think a lot of people, it's interesting reading about the difference in opinions on that album. Some people hold it up here. Some people look at it as kind of like a quick replication of A Night at the Opera. Obviously, the two projects, there's some, it's like a brother-sister project, obviously, with the titles, the artwork. There's a lot of similarities. And I think that what's fun about A Day at the Races, though, is that it's there's unique features to it as far as I think the biggest one is the band producing on their own for the first time. So excited to talk about that. Excited to talk about a number of other things involved with the project. Before we get into this thing, though, please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up through the end of the year and into 2025. For those of you that are new to Classic Wax, this is a channel where we do live classic album reviews. Couple of stipulations that I need to lay out if you're not familiar. The first is that the record that we talk about needs to be released on the day that I do the show. So A Night at the Opera released on December 10th, 1976. And the other big stipulation is that the album needs to be more than 20 years old. Obviously, this record falls into that category, and so if you have any recommendations, anything that you guys would like to hear, throw that in the comments. Try to do as much as I can to respond to all of you, to read all the comments on videos, and certainly, I'm certainly not opposed to taking recommendations. If you're a fan of the channel and there's something that you want to hear me talk about, throw that in there, and I certainly will give it consideration. The other thing I want to talk about is another new live show that I'm going to start on Monday. I wanted to start it this week, but just felt that there was some other pre-production that needed to be put into place, some other planning. Again, just trying to keep the integrity of this project intact. I don't want to just throw stuff out there for likes and clicks and all that stuff. That's not what this is about. This is about just talking music, creating a network of people that can exchange ideas, debate a little bit, and just generally put their love of music into this platform and into any other platforms that they choose to do so. But the Daily Deep Cut is going to start on Monday. I'm going to be doing that 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be a quick live segment. I think that I'm just enjoying the element of going live. There's a little more freedom as far as hiccups, pre-recorded stuff. Generally, you need to be on point. You try to limit the uhs and the other stuff. And what I love about the live shows in general is that they feel more conversational. There's that element that I really love. So don't be shy to comment. Happy to comment on anything that comes up in the live stream here while we're getting this show done. And don't be shy about super chatting as well. If you guys want to throw down, leave me a like a nickel, a dime. Any of that stuff goes a really long way as far as helping me build the channel and just improving things in general, improving the studio, getting better equipment, especially getting better well, I'm just drawing such a blank right now, but better programs as far as editing, and OBS is great, but there's certainly features on it and many other programs that I use that once you pay for that yearly subscription, it gives you access to a lot, lets you play with stuff, and it just opens things up. So let's get into it. Talking about A Day at the Races from Queen, just a gorgeous record, a record that follows right off the footsteps of A Night at the Opera. And I think that a lot of people, they look at this record and the criticisms, there's some people that hold it in high regard. I hold this album in very high regard. There's some people that argue that this is just a way for Queen to piggyback off the success of A Night at the Opera. But I don't think that's a fair assessment at all. I think that this is a record that holds up incredibly well, even as a partner project to A Night at the Opera. And I think that you really see this band coming into its own confidently on this record. It's the first album that they produced on their own. Roy Thomas Baker, he had a 4-record contract with the band. His last project with them was A Night at the Opera. And these guys chose to move into A Day at the Races without him. And I think ultimately it's a good decision. Having the freedom to record and create as you want to. I'm someone that argues that having an outside pair of ears can be very beneficial, but I think that when you work with the same person on such a consistent basis and you put out that much work with them, there's an element of your art being a reflection of their influence. And so I think that's what's cool about A Day at the Races, kind of sidestepping that and making it really sound like their own. And I think it's so cool for that reason. And speaking of coming into your own, I want to start the show off by talking about Lauren Mayberry and this new record, Vicious Creature. Now, if you're familiar with Lauren, she is the front woman for Church's fantastic Scottish outfit. And their last record, Screen Violence, put out in 2021, phenomenal album. It's one of my favorite records from that year. Excuse me there. I think Lauren really, the entire band actually, I should say, coming into their own, again, with that sense of confidence that seems to be the focus of what we're talking about tonight, and making art on their own terms without anybody else in mind. Lauren's very vocal though, and she's very active, not just musically in the process of creation, but out there in the world, very philanthropic, very much a feminist, driven by any type of cause that supports women and their place in the world, which is absolutely important. And I think that what I love about her attitude is that it's slightly punk rock. So she's definitely she's like a little bit of like Joan Jett in her, I feel like, as far as, not pandering to simple male, let's call it bullshit, is really what it is. I think that, even in this day and age, the world of rock and roll, the music world, is still very dominated, very male dominated in a lot of ways. And so to see powerful women like her, just take charge and have an impact, have a big part of steering the world in a different direction where people are more open-minded to the abilities of individuals, especially females. Screen Violence, what I loved about that record, talking about the just, toxic perspective towards women that still exists out there, but also talking about the toxicity of the modern world that we live in when it comes to, the screen violence, like the literal screen violence. Every day we wake up, we got these things that we're constantly buried in, this computer that I'm looking at all the time. It's, they're great, useful tools. There's a ton of potential with all of this technology that we use every day, and I'm very happy to have it around me. Obviously, I'm able to come to you guys live on a weekly basis and coming up on a daily basis, and able to do a number of other things with it. But it's also, it's a weird place where it's a scary place. It's a place where people have more anonymity, I feel like, even though you can trace IP codes and, like if you're going to do dangerous stuff, then it's pretty easy to track information back to a computer. But I don't think most of us are going out of our way to track down and hunt down people that are disparaging us in the comment sections of whatever platform it is that we're looking at. But it can be very toxic. It can be really unfortunate if you leave your social media open up, especially to the general public. Putting stuff out there, putting yourself out there, and then the feedback that comes at you. And there's been a few moments over the history of this channel where I've had some people that I it's tough. I don't want to say that I'm not proud or that I'm ashamed, but I feel for the most part I'm a pretty laid back person, that I tend to not be very aggressive. But when I get fired up, I do get fired up. I think most people that know me will tell you that. It takes a lot to push that button, but when that button is pushed, then I'm kind of all in. And so social media it's a tough place to navigate. The world in the internet is a tough area to navigate. And I think Lauren and her perspective on where the world was at, in the coming off the back end of COVID, just living for about over a year now. It's probably like closer to a year and a half by the time that album was released, with what was going on at the time, and all of us being inside, really only having this outlet as the main medium for interacting with the world, and the way that the world changed with regards to that, and the way that it's so easy to show disrespect. I think that's, at the end of the day, when you're interacting with someone face to face, there's a totally different dynamic than when they're halfway around the world on the internet, and you can just comment, and there's no reason for you to hang around for them to say anything. Like, you say what you have to say, oftentimes very vehemently, and you just drop that comment, and there you go. And so I really enjoyed that record, not just sonically. I mean, the music is absolutely amazing. A great collaboration with Robert Smith on that record as well, which, the band talks about that this is a project that started off with very little ambition. It was more about creating some music, getting it out on the internet, and seeing what the response would be. And as we all know now, the response was incredibly receptive. And they're a dope band. I really am excited for Lauren being able to branch out. This new record, talking about the experience of it, there's definitely, I would say lyrically, she's still doing what she does. She's a strong woman. She's got a bit of bite, and I like the way that she uses that to her strength. It's again, there's the aggressive reaction to things isn't always well received, but I feel like when you pick and choose your moments to throw down, which I think she does very well, and I think this album definitely demonstrates that, it's a tool that can be very powerful, and I think that her branching out away from churches, sonically, this experience is really what's different, and it's cool to see her making music on her own terms, working on production, working from the creative standpoint. There's a number of different talking points with regards to that. Why she chose to branch out and do this, and she talks about just wanting to grow personally. Having that experience with churches and writing music, but taking time to do this solo project to rediscover that process on her own. I think that these new songs, they are so captivating in what they bring to the table with the music. I feel like Churches is more of for as electronically driven as their sound is, it definitely falls into that category of alternative rock, where this new record, there's certainly elements of what Churches does, but I think that Vicious Creature is an album that is very pop driven. There's such a big influence of Madonna on this record. I couldn't help but feel that, especially talking about Like a Virgin recently, and the irony that goes along with playing pop music while also, providing lyrical content that's all about, the scope of society. It's all about her perspective and running down her feelings on where we're at in the world. And again, she's not shy. She's it's the one thing that I'm glad that she didn't decide to change. I didn't want to use the word compromise because I don't feel like she's the type that does. But I'm glad that she didn't change that element of her music. There's moments where she's tender, where she's sincere, and she's really trying to cultivate an environment of of welcoming, of growth, of trying to just trying to make people feel a part of what she's doing. But then there's definitely tracks where the second song on the record, Crocodile Tears, is a track that, just in the title in and of itself, it's a good example of when she veers off from that and she takes that more aggressive stance, and she's not willing to call men out for their bullshit. And I dig that about her sound, and I dig that about the record, and I think that she's done a really marvelous job on this first project of finding that balance of what does well, what she's so well known for coming off of that project, but taking that and sort of reinventing it and making it all her own. So there's a great subscriber on the channel that I appreciate the insight. I was talking about Tool and the way that they make music. And, I was suggesting in the future, maybe, the other bandmates do their own thing while Lauren puts together the vocals, the lyrical aspect of things. They can come together. And if you're familiar with Tool, that's an outfit where everybody in the band, aside from Maynard, they're all about, making the music, putting together compositions. They send it to Maynard, and then Maynard does what he does with his vocal element. And knowing that is how Chvrches puts their music together, I want to extend some thanks to the fan that pointed that out. It's cool that they've done that from the get-go, and I think that as they move forward, my hope and what this person suggested would happen, and I think that this is, fingers crossed, what is going to go down, but she'll alternate releases. So continue working with Chvrches, continue doing her own solo thing, and with that dynamic, you get two projects that you have the same front woman there, but there's definitely each project has its own unique qualities and brings different things to the table that make them both worthwhile. And I think that's just stellar. So if you haven't checked out Vicious Creature from Lauren Mayberry, definitely give that record a listen. I really enjoyed that album and enjoyed talking about it as well on the channel. We're going to get to the main focus of the show tonight, though. It's time to talk about Queen and A Day at the Races. Now, I've talked about the absence of Roy Thomas Baker on this record. This was an album where, his recorded contract, his written contract was up, no longer obligated to work with Queen. And Queen, there wasn't any animosity that I'm aware of. If I'm wrong about that, please share in the comments. But it just seemed to me that Queen had reached a point. They had reached a level of development as artists where they were comfortable taking the reins from that regard, not just writing the music, but producing it and making it truly their own. And I think that's the best thing about A Day at the Races. I think one of my favorite things about Queen, and looking at the movie that was recently released, Freddie Mercury is something else. One of the greatest, most just legendary frontmen of all time, front people of all time. But this is a band where what I really enjoyed about that movie was the other members of the band and the way that they were portrayed. And I think that the movie could have gone even deeper into what Brian May and what Roger Taylor and John Deacon brought to the table from an artistic standpoint, because they weren't just bandmates. Brian is a guy that has half of the songwriting credits on this particular record and written a number of songs for the band. I feel anytime that this band has taken that heavy route, he's at the helm of the songwriting, and I love that about Queen. I love when they take the time to really rock out and go heavy. It's a dynamic that's super unique to them, and I think working with Freddie over the years, this is a record that displays how dynamic and how just influenced by so many different sounds these guys are. And even from the opener, Tie Your Mother Down, you just get a big rockin' track that it's heavy, the lyrics are in your face, the vocals in your face, and I love the way that Freddie embraces that. And then likewise, when Freddie's writing a song, he definitely tends to take more of the I guess, operatic approach, let's call that. Influences of cabaret, of vaudeville on this particular record. There's the influence of the Baroque on Somebody to Love. There's so many things that drive their sound. And there's people that argue that with all the different influences and with everything that they're trying to do, particularly on this record, that it doesn't come together well. And I disagree with that. I think that there's moments where if Freddie's writing a track, for instance, let's just say, I really think the Millionaire Waltz is a perfect example of, a Freddie-driven track. But when Brian shows up, and his influence, it may be nuanced, it may be subtle, it may not be the biggest feature of a song, but you can tell that these guys are embracing what they're all bringing to the table. And I think that that's what makes for the most cohesive music outfit, the most cohesive musical unit that you can bring together, is when people are receptive of other ideas. You don't have just one person saying yes, no, this is great, this is trash, because it's a common dynamic that has existed in a lot of bands. But these guys, when they were in their prime, and I would, a lot of people would argue, I would argue that this is this band in their prime, coming off A Night at the Opera and then doing A Day at the Races, following it up so fast. And maybe to a certain degree, there's some detriment to the project there. I don't know. It's fascinating when you look at music 50, 60 years ago, the demands of record labels. You sign this piece of paper, you sign this contract, and then you're obligated to do certain things. And it's any wonder, really, that you see a band like Queen, for example, produce music of the quality that they do. Especially taking a couple-month hiatus after A Night at the Opera. The success of that record, they, massive world tour to support it. And by the time they were done, they were just exhausted. So a couple months of respite, and then they came back together. But you think about, all right, we have X amount of days to make a follow-up to this record that basically, didn't put us on the map, because they were definitely there before, but really made them. I would say that that's an album that escalated them to that legendary status, that really made them a big part of that wave of rock and roll coming out of the UK in the 70s at that time. And you got to think about how much music was changing too, like the mid 70s. There's a story about them meeting the Sex Pistols and how they were amicable, how they had I'm not sure what exactly the interactions in the studio were like, but you have two very different outfits and two outfits with very differing personalities, I feel like. But at the end of the day, artists, people that are in that space, doing what they can to be as creative and as prolific as possible. And so I think that Queen, with the way that music was starting to branch out and with so many different sounds, especially driving rock and roll, I think that this is a record that captures a number of different sounds that, it's tough. It's tough for any outfit to try to bring together what these guys did on this record, and in that small span of time as well. But Under Pressure, it's one of their best songs. They handle the pressure well, and depending on your personality too, some people thrive on that. Some people thrive on having those deadlines, having that restricted period of time where it's like, all right, like you have this pocket, make it happen. It's not for everybody, but some people do very well in that. And I think that Queen is a band that certainly has certainly excelled and certainly inspired. Even with those, time restraints, even with that going on. So, I love talking about the influences of or the contributions from all the band members. I love, I just love the way that these guys' personalities were starting to be defined too. I feel John Deacon is a perfect example of a guy that, you start to hear that lead bass element. He's one of the few bass players I feel like that that, I mean, at the time anyway, it's more common now. And I look at a guy like Peter Hook, Joy Division, just showing up a few years after the release of this record and what they did in such a short span of time. But John, with that lead bass element, making it an instrument that's not just meant there, not just meant to be there in the rhythm section, call it the background, if you will. I hate to say that because I'm a bass player and I love a good drummer. Any time in my life where I've had the opportunity to play with a drummer consistently, it just makes playing my bass so much more special, so much more enjoyable. But to see John and the way that he plays with Freddie and his, a lot of the piano leads that are on some of these songs is impressive. And, the same thing with Roger Taylor. I mean, each John and Roger contributed a song to this record. And I think that, Roger's song, Drowse is, it's a phenomenal song, and it's a penultimate track. I mean, you have an album that's, from a writing standpoint, is dominated by Freddie. It's dominated by Brian. But he's got a writing credit, and it's for the penultimate track, and I think that's really cool as well. But it's time to jump into the track list, I think, on this thing. I think we'll lead it off. The first song, "Tie Your Mother Down," written by Brian May. This is I love the way that this song comes out heavy, leads off the record. And again, I know I stated it before, but when Queen goes heavy, it's one of my favorite sounds, and just the tone on his guitar is phenomenal. But you get a big gong that ushers in this heavy hitting riff. And there's this kind of like carnival element that usurps the guitar for a moment and becomes very playful. And then it just comes right back. And hard, rolling, bluesy sounding track. I really dig the blues element of this track. Feels like there's a little southern rock at play on this thing. Great slide guitar element as well. May's doing the backing vocals on this particular track. It's almost 5 minutes, big album opener, and it's just furious, thunderous, and I love the way that they come out with that energy. And I think it's a big part of why this record has such an impact, especially coming off A Night at the Opera. Just as huge as that record was, and trying to, not necessarily follow it up, but create another piece of work, create another album that still has the impact, that still has the energy and the fire that record did. And I think "Tie Your Mother Down" is a brilliant way to start this project off, and I think it has that effect. "You Take My Breath Away" is a Freddie track. That is your second song, and just a total 180 coming off of "Tie Your Mother Down." And this is a moment where I'd argue few bands can do this effectively. They can do it well, making these two songs seem cohesive, like they belong together in the same project. And there's some people that might argue that they don't, but it's so, like, two tracks, the two opening songs, you just see the diversity of this outfit and what they're willing to do, what they're trying to do. And it's something that's always impressed me about them. You got Freddie a cappella layers of ooze over the "Take My Breath Away." I really like that vocal element to open on this song. Gentle piano creates this really just dramatic flair. Freddie sings over it brilliantly. The song builds beautifully on the harmonies. I really love that element. And talking about the film, talking about the portrayal of Freddie Mercury, Roger Taylor is a guy that I don't think he gets enough credit for what he brings to the table with his backing vocals. And I mean, it's the same with John and Brian. I think Roger's backing vocals are superb, and they're definitely more of what you hear on the Queen sound. But I mean, even Brian and John doing their thing, just the harmonies that are there. It's such an important part of their music. And talking about the Beatles last week, that's, another outfit. Talking about the Beach Boys at that time in the mid-'60s and what they were doing with chamber pop, the harmonies that they brought together. It's one of my favorite things about popular music, not just rock and roll in general, but anytime a group of people can come together and create something like that, just the layers of vocals, and even, this opening song, it's the vocals triple tracked on Freddie's part. So just the use of the studio as well, coming into that. We're a decade on after the release of Rubber Soul that we were talking about last week, but you see so many artists embracing the potential of what the studio can do, and tough to mimic that in the live show. And how each band chooses to do that is entirely up to them, but that's the amazing thing about the studio. And I do love the idea of any band going in and using the tools at hand to create the best music that they possibly can. So I think that's a really cool element of that track. Song builds beautifully on those harmonies. As I said, a bit of guitar works in, and this is another example of Brian really kind of taking a back seat a little bit, just knowing when that beautiful tone on his guitar needs to come in and do its work. And sometimes there's just a tidbit of music that you're getting, but it has a big impact. It goes a long way. The coda on this song is a bit trippy too. I really like the way that track exits out. Long Away is your third song. Got a track from May here. He's doing the lead vocals on this song as well. Guitar interplays with the speakers as well. I love that from production. And that's why I always tell people, like, put a record on, and if you have the ability to listen to it in your headphones, do that, because it's just such a fun way to listen to music. I'd argue that it's the best way to listen to music. But there's a couple moments, this song included, where they take advantage of that aspect. The guitars have this Beatlesque feel. I mean, think of like Ticket to Ride, as far as the Beatles, and even what they were doing a little bit on Rubber Soul as well. Rhythm has a great drive. Love the bass on this song, coming from John. Superb performance there from him. Great third track. Love the energy. It's kind of a mid-tempo, call it like a combination of the energy of the first two tracks that you get, trying to find some middle ground there, coming off of something really big and then something mellow and gentle and pretty. The Millionaire Waltz is your fourth track, another Mercury track here. The piano play is just brilliant right off the bat, and I love the way that John's bass is playing along with that piano. This is a superb example of that lead bass element that I'm talking about and what that provides. But it just blends brilliantly with Freddie's vocal. That all comes together. And then Brian's guitars are going to hit around a minute in. The song builds, and then right at about 2.5 minutes, it just attacks. And I love the way that it rocks out, the heaviness, and then it's going to back off a little bit, and it flirts with maybe going back to that heavy sound as the track concludes, but it never quite gets there. And I think that's one of the best elements of that song, the way that it builds, it gets nice and heavy, and then there's this, like, is it going to happen? Is it not? Like, what's going on with the back end of the song? And so I dig just the construction of the composition from that standpoint. You and I is your fifth song. It's going to close out the A side of this record. That's your track from John on this project. Big driving piano is going to usher in this instrumental build. Get this gentle rocking track with a slightly subdued vocal. John is playing acoustic guitar on this particular song. And so, talking about personnel and, when people choose to show up and play within this outfit, I think that this is a rock and roll outfit that was very aware of when certain players provided something that was better. And again, talking about the Beatles, it's impossible not to reference them for everything that they did, especially with regards to that. It's like, oh, Ringo's going to sound better on this song. We'll let Ringo sing. He gets such a hard time. He gets so much shit, I feel like. But Ringo, incredibly talented drummer, great singer. I've always loved Ringo's voice. But just knowing, between John and Paul, I feel like that was the big switch off. Just knowing whose vocal is going to provide the best melodic component for a track. And it's just, it's cool to see these guys put the ego aside and just know what is the best for their music. Your B-side is going to kick off with the biggest single on this album, Somebody to Love. Great song. Got that Baroque influence again. Big vocal to open. It's so signature. I feel like of all the Queen songs that are out there, the moment that you hear that vocal, it's so easy to identify what's coming at you. And it makes such an impression too. I think that's the biggest thing, is that from the moment you drop the needle on the B-side of this record, you are captivated by the introduction of that song. Piano trickles in to set the stage. Gentle rocking track. This thing, it has its moments where I feel like the music, the instrumentation kind of stays restrained while the harmonies and the vocals go big. And I'd say that that's where that gospel influence is really coming in heavy on this song. Lots of moments in Queen's catalog where the music goes big along with the vocal, but I like that dynamic. I like that the music stays kind of subdued and that the harmonies and the big vocal melodies are what gets to be the highlight of this track. And it's a beautiful song. It's really quite a track. Probably one of their best. Certainly would love to hear any debate on that from you all as well. White Man is your 7th song. This is a May composition, originally entitled Simple Man, I believe, but there's another band with a song of that title that and it's a pretty good song too. So I like that they made this change, and I think that this is a song that I think with the change in title, it gives the focus on the lyrical content more meaning. Heavy on the vocal, heavy on the guitar. This might be one of the bigger moments in the Queen catalog where they're just really bringing the thunder as far as assessing a situation, and that situation being the way that the white man chose to settle America and all the nasty things that we did to the natives that were here when we showed up. And so, this song, like I think that the mood of the music, the energy of the lyrics, it all comes together nicely, and I think it's appropriate. This is a song that big vocal to open. Brian's guitar is right there as well. It's got this outlaw feel too, just this edgy tension that builds with the mood and the melodies. And I love Brian's guitar on this particular song. White Man opens up the rest of the band once he drops that. Once Freddie drops that lyric there, and the rest of the band comes in, and just a hard rock and flair. The guitars are solid, and the quiet coda as well. I really I've always been very impressed by that, and I want to read the lyrics coming off of that because I think that they have a massive impact. They're simple, but they definitely they fall into this very unsettling feeling that just given the content of the song and what they're talking about, it works. But what he says at the end of the track is hold on, let me load this up here. It closes with this coda that goes kind of quiet, but then he says, take a look around, every skin and bone, yeah, I'll get you, yeah. What is left of your dream? Just the words on your stone, a man who learned how to teach, then forgot how to learn. Oh yeah, that is so heavy and so solid. I absolutely love what they bring to the table with that particular track. It's good stuff. Good old-fashioned Loverboy is your 8th song. Some Mercury track. Mike Stone working with lead vocals on this thing, which he was one of the engineers on this record along with Gary Langan. So I like you talk about like, hey, who's gonna sound best on this song? It's like, hey, let's get Mike in on this one. It's it's so random, but I mean, kudos to these guys for that. Vocal and piano out the gate brings a bright funk, driving groove. The piano and the vocal remain the focal point of the song, though. I really dig that about it. The other elements playfully work around, and this is a song where I listen to John's bass, and there's simplicity to his riffs sometimes, but then there will be like subtle nuances where he'll change what he's doing, change the structure of the line, change the timing. It's phenomenal listening to him and all of these guys when they take the time, and all the thought that they're putting into that nuance is remarkable. And I think that this song is a really good example of that, especially on John's bass. Drowsy is your 9th song, Roger Taylor track, your penultimate track, which is that's not a common thing to see a penultimate track from your drummer on a record, but here we are. Brilliant layers of electric and acoustic guitar, bright vocal, and Roger's providing the vocal on this as well, so I think he sounds great on this song. It's a little psychedelic. You got these swirling guitars that they've always had just such an impression on me. It's my favorite element of this composition. They just hit the spot so well. And then Tio Toriate, Let Us Cling Together, is your final song. It's a May composition. Piano opens up with unique textures and other layers that work in. This is a song that sounds like it should have been written by Freddie, but it's written by Brian, and I think that, talking point earlier, these guys just understanding each other and being on the same page with their artistry and what they can do together. And this is a great example of that. It sets a somber mood. The bass works in with a playful trickle. You get this quick drum roll, brings in the soft rock. Big build as this thing leads into a playful instrumental coda. And, you got the longest song on the record at 5 minutes and 54 seconds. But it flies by. It has such an impression, and I feel like it's a track that, from time to time I'll do this, but an album closer can usually be pretty impactful. And this is one where I think that maybe I'll move the record over to the groove one more. Maybe I'll do it one more time. And it's, I would certainly be remiss if I said that I hadn't done that before. But I love this album, and I hope that you guys get a chance to enjoy it this week. A Day at the Races from Queen is your album of the week on your Classic Wax channel here. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews, guys. There's definitely some stuff that I want to backtrack and talk about, stuff that was released earlier on in the year. I'm excited to get into that, see what your opinions are. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. And talking about the Daily Deep Cut and some other things, I did just start a channel membership. So if you feel so inclined to do so, please check that out. It's 99 cents per month. Not asking a whole lot on that, and you will start getting some featured content and more stuff leading into 2025, as far as some lists, some fun videos, some documentaries, some other shorts as well. And I'm really excited to bring that to all of you in the coming months ahead. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Have a good night. And we'll see you next time on Classic Wax.